Previously, we looked at Boolean operators, where we have a Boolean expression that contains one of these operators and evaluates to true or false. And we saw that there were 6 Boolean operators. A double equals is equal to. We have the less than symbol, the greater than symbol, a less than or equal to, a greater than or equal to, and a is not equal to that uses the exclamation mark. We're going to expand upon this and do complex Boolean expressions in which we introduce logical operators. And there are 3 that we're going to focus on. There's a few others, but these are the 3 that most people use and probably don't use much of the others. And that is a double ampersand, which means and, a double vertical pipe. And if you're wondering how to type that vertical pipe, it is a shift backslash. Shift backslash. Gives you that vertical bar, what we call a pipe. And then the exclamation mark, which we saw in the is not equal to, the exclamation mark simply means not. So we've used Boolean expressions in an if statement. So if something is true, we do something. So for example, if the weather equals raining, we might bring up a message box that says, take an umbrella. But sometimes it's convenient to be able to look at 2 different things and see if they're both true. So if this is true and this other thing is also true, then we want to do something. So the example here is if weather equals sunny, sorry, that was my Rottweiler barking at something. If weather equals sunny and transportation equals walking, the message box may say take an umbrella. Because here in Arizona, when it's very hot out and people want to avoid skin cancer, sometimes they walk with umbrellas when it's a clear day and sunny. So the and symbol is this double ampersand. Both of these conditions need to be true for the whole thing to be true and to show this message box. So let's look at what we call a truth table. We have our 2 expressions, Boolean 1 and Boolean 2, and there are 4 possibilities here. Both sides, Boolean 1 and Boolean 2, could be true, and the result is the whole expression is true. But if Boolean 1 is true and Boolean 2 is false, then the whole expression is false. And if Boolean 1 is false, but Boolean 2 is true, the whole expression is false. And if they're both false, obviously the whole expression is false. Let's take a look at the or. We might have an expression that if this is true or this other thing is true, we want to do something. It doesn't matter which side of that expression is true, either Boolean 1 or Boolean 2. If one of those is true, we want to do something. So here's our example. If season equals summer, or temperature is greater than 90. Here in Arizona, we might have some spring days that are greater than 90, might have some fall days that are greater than 90. But if season is summer, or if the temperature is above 90, we want to show a message box that would say, I'd wear shorts today. Here then is our truth table. So if both Boolean 1 and Boolean 2 are true, and we're using an or, and again, the or is the double pipes, or double vertical pipes. If both of those are true, the result is true. If Boolean 1 is true, but Boolean 2 is false, the whole expression is still true. And likewise, if Boolean 1 is false and Boolean 2 is true, the whole expression is true. It's only false if both sides are false. It's an either or condition. And then we have the not operator. And the not simply makes a true statement false or a false statement true. Obviously, if something's not true, it's false, and if something's not false, it's true. So the not operator comes before the expression, although we've used the not operator in the not equals Boolean operation. But if not this is true, do something. Now, it's not good grammar, but this is how it would be written. And so an example here would be, if not day type equals weekday, then the message box we would show is enjoy this weekend day. I don't use the not operator very often. It comes in handy once in a great while, particularly if you're wanting to test and just do a simple if operation. But you really just want to do the if something is false. Then you can say if not, whatever the true expression is, do something. The ands and the ors I tend to use a fair amount. Let's look at an example. Let's suppose we were holding student orientations on campus. And students were showing up, and we had a sign directing them that the new students, if their last name is A through L, should go to room 103, but if their last name is M through Z, they should go to room 108. But if the returning students, A through L, should go to room 204, and if their last name starts with an M through Z, they should go to room 207. Well, instead of this sign, we're going to have a little kiosk that they're going to register at. And here is our example. So in Visual Studio, I've created a form. We're going to ask them to enter their first name, last name, and click the register button. Let me just run this so you can see this work, and then we'll look at the code. So if they don't put something in, they click register, they're going to get a message box saying, please enter both your first and last names. Even if they just put in their first name and not the last name, they'll get that, and vice versa. If they put in a last name and not the first name, they'll get that message box. Let's say they put in both, and I'm going to change the last name here so it is an A through L letter. So Susan Brown registers, asked if she attended last semester. We're going to start with no, so she's a new student, and she's told, thank you, please proceed to room 103. Well, let's say Tom Smith comes along, he registers, he says no, he's a new student, but because his last name started with S, he's a new student, M through Z, and told to proceed to room 108. So Barbara Jones registers. She is a returning student, so she clicks yes, and the dialog says she's a returning student, A through L. Please proceed to room 204. And Phil Turner registers. He's also a returning student, but because his last name is M through Z, he's told to proceed to room 207. And just notice I've got a missing parenthesis there on a couple of those. So we're going to click OK, and let's take a look at our code. So this is txt first name, txt last name, and our button is btn register. Let's take a look at the code. Now, to see this better, I'm going to expand my window here. I pasted a comment in of which room each student was going to, new students versus last name, just so I had a reference. And then here is the code for our btn register button. So I'm going to take the text box, txt first name, and get the text and put that into a string called fn for first name, and the text of txt last name text box goes into ln. And then I have an if fn is equal to a null string, quote, quote, or ln is equal to a null string, quote, quote. I'm going to show a message box that says, please first enter both your first and last name. Now, obviously, I could have done an if fn equals, quote, quote, please enter your first name, then done another else if ln is equal to, quote, quote, show the last name. But here I can do them both at the same time and just simply say, please enter both your first and last names. Then I did an else fork. In that else fork, I'm going to present the dialog box of their first name, comma, did you attend SMCC last semester? My title is simply returning, and I'm using yes, no buttons and putting the result into a variable called dr, which is a type dialog result. And then I have an if, else if, else if, else if structure that is using complex Booleans. And I could have done a bunch of nested if, else ifs here, but instead I'm going to use complex Booleans. So if dr is equal to dialog result.no, meaning they're a new student, and here I use the string compare. I'm looking at ln to an uppercase, taking the first character, dot substring 0, 1, and comparing that to the letter m. And if it's less than m, if that ln first character is less than m, it's going to return a negative number. So I just said, is it less than 0? And if it is, my message box simply is, proceed to room 103. You are student A through L. My else if, first else if dr again is equal to dialog result.no, so they're a new student, looking at that first character of their last name, comparing that to the letter m. If it's equal to or greater than m, we're going to tell them go to room 108. This is for new students M through Z. Else if they said yes to the message box, so dr is equal to dialog result.yes, and the first letter of their last name is less than m, we're going to tell them we're going to go to room 204, and our title here is returning students A through L. And an else if Again, they said yes to the message box, so they are a returning student. The first letter of their last name, this ln.toupper.substring 0,1, first letter of their last name, converted uppercase, comparing it to m. If it's greater than or equal to 0, meaning it's either a match to m or it's a positive integer because it's greater than m, or this is greater than m, then we're going to tell them to go room 207. And the title here is Returning Students M through Z. I didn't put an else fork here. Basically, I've hit all the possibilities, but you could have an else of, I don't know where you go. And then the last 3 lines here, I simply clear the 2 text boxes and set the focus to txt first name, so the cursor ends up in that first name text box. So that is how I use, in this particular example, an OR logical operator and a bunch of AND logical operators.